Okay. On Monday, Florida landed four-star offensive tackle Fletcher Westfall, a 6'8", 335-pound offensive tackle out of the state of Virginia. And then on Wednesday, it was a big in-state win over rival Miami for four-star defensive lineman Kendall Jackson. Let's bring on Corey Bender of Gators Online to talk a little bit more. Now, Corey, 3 commitments this week is possible because tomorrow on Friday, 3-star corner Teddy Foster announces his decision. It comes down to Miami, UF, and UNC. Is this about to be another big in-state win for the Florida Gators?
Bearing any surprises, Josh, it should be. Florida's been trending for almost a month now. His sister graduated from Florida. And, when I talk to the kid, doing this job for so many years, it's not often when you talk to a kid on the phone and you kind of get off the phone understanding like, hey, this could be the leader. You can tell how important that one specific offer is in the kid's voice. And that's kind of what it was with Teddy Foster. When he was speaking to me about Florida, you can tell it was a game-changing offer. And the opportunity to stay home in Florida, playing the SEC, following his sister's footsteps. And it was just an offer the whole family was really excited about. So I know Miami's made up a little bit of ground in recent weeks. North Carolina did a good job in their OV as well. But, bearing any surprises, Florida should definitely win out come Friday.
A little bit of a reversal on the trail. It seemed like last year, at least towards the end of the cycle, it was Miami that was winning all these battles. Now, Florida is just whooping up on Miami in-state so far this summer. Have you noticed a little change in the dynamics within the state?
Yeah, a little bit. I feel like with Billy Napier's staff, they're just kind of getting their feet wet, and they have over a year under their belt up in Gainesville. They're getting adjusted. And the one thing with Florida too, I know everyone, I talked to Keith about this, is like the culture they're kind of building up there. A lot of the kids they're recruiting are very high character, and you see that on OVs. A lot of these kids will come in town, they really kind of gel together. A lot of kids can just connect in different ways, even though they haven't really met together. They haven't really met before. So I think with Florida, I just think, it's a momentum game in recruiting. In June, you get 1 or 2 commitments and other kids follow. And, social media is a big one with DJ Lagway. The staff is hyping all this stuff up as well. So I think recruiting is just about catching momentum. And I think they caught it at the perfect time, after a jam-packed month of June.
It feels that way. And if they do go on to land Teddy Foster on Friday, that'll give the Gators 20 commitments. So we're getting down to some of these final spots. And the question becomes, can UF finish strong? Let's look at some of these big names on the board. Defensive lineman LJ McCray, cornerback Wardell Mack, cornerback Jamari Howard, safety Zay Mincey. A lot of defensive backs here. It looks like, to me, Corey, that's the biggest remaining need left on the board for the Gators.
100%, Josh. Yeah, I think cornerback's their biggest need. The last couple of cycles, they signed some versatile DBs that kind of bounce around the secondary, and you'll fill different needs depending on what scheme they're in. But overall, yeah, I would say cornerback's the biggest need. Also, it's the one position I would say that has the biggest name targets left on the board. Wide receiver's another one. They're trying to flip several guys at the position, but Jamari Howard, Zay Mincey, those are some big corners, some big kids that can play safety as well. And then Teddy Foster, who's more of a pure corner. So I think with Corey Raymond, you just got to trust what he's doing. This is why you pay him the big bucks to kind of win these recruiting battles. So I think right now, that corner is the biggest need, but I think it's one of those positions that should be filled fairly quickly. And then all attention, if they do get Teddy Foster, will be on, Jamari Howard and Zay Mincey. And with Howard, he's coming to town at the end of this month, and that'll be a big opportunity for the Gators.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about LJ McCray right now at a Mainland High School there in the state of Florida. This is another in-state battle, mainly between FSU and UF, and it looks like I would probably give the edge right now to the Gators. Are they going to be able to get him on campus at the end of this month?
It's there. He's expected. So I know I talked to a few sources in Gainesville. He is expected to be there, and that'd be huge. Him and Zay Mincey both have a timeline that's kind of unclear right now. I know Mincey wanted to decide before the season. McCray had an OV set with FSU for October. And I always thought for a while FSU had the slight edge over Florida for McCray. Just depending on, that visit date is huge. He took all his OVs in June, and, Tallahassee for a game day, for that'll be his only game day OV. Could really leave a lasting impression. And I know FSU's been consistent too. So I know the timing of that OV is very important. So I think Florida, they really have to kind of knock out of the park on July 29th when they do host them. But I think it's going to be very close. I think it's nearly a coin flip between those schools. You got Georgia too, the out-of-state school. You can't obviously rule them out. But I think he stays in state. Miami's kind of more the dark horse for him. I know that staff is very high on him. When I went to his spring game, they had several staff members there. FSU was there too. So it'll likely come down to the in-state schools with McCray. But I don't think anyone right now knows exactly where he's going to go. His recruitment's that close.
No, but at 6'6", 260 pounds, you can see why he is so highly valued here in the South. All right, now we're talking cornerback. You got Wardell Mack coming in at the end of the month. And what's up with Jamari Howard, though? He's a former Michigan State commitment. And when he reopened his recruitment right before summer started, it sure seemed like it was going to be a big three battle. But then this summer, he did something a little weird to me. He took official visits to Michigan State and Rutgers, two teams that, hey, I just don't think that they're really going to factor into his final decision. So what's going on with his recruitment? Is this something that we're going to expect to see go into the fall? Or, I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, and I wrote in one of my insiders, I think it's one of those recruitments where it could get shut down this summer or it could be in the fall. I don't even think Howard knows what he wants to do yet. And like you said, with Michigan State, you don't often see a kid decommit from a school that far away and then take an OV just a few weeks later. You basically kind of have them on the outside looking in. You mention them as a top school, but you kind of know he's not gonna end up back there. But I really think the Spartans are still in this. They really knocked out of the park during their OV. They're still a major threat. The problem with that is he already took his OV to Michigan State. You know, he plays Friday nights in Miami, some games on Saturday. To kind of book an unofficial visit to get up to East Lansing is going to be very, very difficult. Right. Which will allow the in-state schools to have more face time with them, generate that momentum down the stretch. So I think right now I still like FSU and Florida the most. You know, FSU is the dream school, and I don't like bringing it up too much, but when I did ask him that a few months ago, I said, what would your dream school? He called me out and goes, FSU. You can tell there's a different type of interest there from his childhood. But I think recruiting-wise, Florida probably has a little bit more momentum, and getting him on campus that weekend instead of FSU is huge. So we'll see if Corey Raymond can close. And I have him on 3 possibilities for the next commit, depending on if they knock out of the park and he says, hey, this is where I want to go. I'm just going to commit while I'm in town. So it's kind of a wait and see with him.
Yeah, and Corey, you and I have been covering recruiting inside the state of Florida long enough to know that sometimes being named the dream school can also be the kiss of death for that program in terms of landing a prospect. I don't know why. It just seems like it shakes out that way sometimes. All right, moving on to Wardell Mack. Early on, the Gators were always kind of hanging in their recruitment, but as the summer months have worn on, it seems like they might be the favorite right now. So who do you think is the biggest competition for the Gators to land Wardell Mack?
So this is another really interesting recruitment. And I say that because we just mentioned the cornerback targets. They're all in the state of Florida. I know Wardell Mack's high in that board, but from talking to a few sources in recent weeks, I know the in-state guys are a little bit more of a priority right now. Mm-hmm. So I think with that being said, this visit on the 29th is going to answer a lot of questions because he's already OV'd. I think this will be his 3rd visit to campus, and we kind of view him as kind of like the next tier of cornerback on their board. But at the same time, it could be one of those situations where, stuff can change and all of a sudden he's on board with the Gators. But I know Texas has been generating a lot of momentum with him as well. LSU's a school close to home. That's another recruitment. I won't have Florida on top of it. I think Florida's more in the top 2, top 3, just depending on where their cornerback board is. But I know Texas is a school that probably did the best job in their OV, and LSU, depending on where their board is too at cornerback, you can't rule them out if they give him the green light. I don't know where he is on their board right now, but I think right now Texas and LSU and Florida are the 3 I'm monitoring the most for Mack.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, what about safety Zay Mincey? He's a really talented player, checks in inside the top 150 at 133 overall, and he's also teammates with LJ McCray at Mainland High School. How much of Zay Mincey's recruitment depends on what LJ McCray does, or are they not linked at all?
I think they both would like to play together. Obviously, they're close, they're friends. But if you look at their OV schedule, it didn't line up the same. So McCray OV'd Florida on a different date than Mincey did. And I kind of thought that was interesting. I thought maybe they would just take their OVs together. And that kind of showed me like, hey, maybe they're open to kind of doing their own thing. So I think overall, I mean, if it lines up perfectly, like a school like Florida or FSU or Miami, I mean, they'd be stoked to play together. I know that for a fact. But it's definitely not, they're not a package deal. They don't have to play together. So I think with Mincey, I put in a pick for him about 3 months ago, and that's basically, they always say read the visits, and Florida's hosting him more than any school by a long shot. It's the school closest to home, and he's a kid that doesn't really. He's not on social media all the time with edits and stuff. He's kind of treating it like a business, doing it behind the scenes. And I think Florida's position is the best right now. FSU's up there too, Miami. It's almost the same type of landscape that he has with McCray, the in-state schools, and you have a few out-of-state schools like Alabama and schools like that you obviously cannot rule out. They can host him in fall, and next year he's committed to them. So, but as it stands right now, Mincey, I have him as a strong Florida lean with the other in-state schools right behind the Gators. So I think with Florida, they just have to keep doing what they're doing, keep getting him on campus. And he wanted to decide before the season, then it kind of got pushed into the season. So if they can get him on campus on the 29th, which right now is kind of 50-50, I think it will be a massive opportunity for Florida to hopefully put the nail in the coffin before the season and get him in the class.
Yeah, and in about 2 weeks, we're looking at the Grill at the Ville, UF's big cookout, end of the month, July celebration. Gators Online, you guys have a running visitor list of who's going to be there. But I wanted to know, Corey, we kind of touched on this earlier about flipping 2 wide receiver targets. Will they be at the Grill at the Ville? And I'm talking about Ohio State wide receiver commit Jeremiah Smith and Miami wide receiver commit Chance Robinson.
So I talked to Jeremiah a few days ago, and he said, I don't know yet. And I know people are going to say, like, well, that doesn't sound promising. No, that's actually not that bad of news because he's a kid that doesn't really deal with recruiting that much publicly when it comes to media. And most of the time he'll be like, no, I'm not going, or hey, I'm not going to answer because I don't want all these rumors to get out. But it's the same. He said he doesn't know yet. So that trip is possible. A lot of Florida commits are going to be in town that weekend. DJ Lagway is more of a 50-50, but I'm sure Smith said, hey, I'm going to go. I'm sure DJ would find a way to get to Gainesville like he did the other 2 times when Smith visited. So Smith right now is a 50-50. And I think, obviously, unless Brian Hartline leaves or takes a head coaching job, I just don't see him flipping. I think Florida might be the school position best to flip him, but that's not really saying too much. I just think his commitment's very strong. And then obviously with Chance Robinson, I actually just wrote about him a few minutes ago. He said he was locked in with Miami after his OV. But as I always tell people, is you kind of have that visit high. You're getting the red carpet treatment. I mean, everything is like glitz and glamour at that time, but it's really in the weeks after, once it settles down, where's that commitment stand? And I think the Hurricanes, obviously, they really knocked it out of the park. They strengthened that pledge for him. But I definitely wouldn't count the Gators out at all. I think if he was to go somewhere else, I think it would definitely be Florida. Billy Napier, Billy Gonzalez, I mean, they're all pushing for him hard. Each time he's visited, I mean, he's raved about Florida. So it's just the timing of those visits. Miami got him on campus after, got him to kind of lock it down. But I'd be surprised if he doesn't visit 1 or 2 more times, before the end of the cycle. And I think there's still very much in it.
So probably sitting right now, probably better chance at flipping Chance Robinson, would you say, as it stands?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. And it just really goes to show Brian Hartline and just Jeremiah Smith, I mean, I get it. Number 1 player in the country. It's really a business decision at this point. Where am I going to go? And I mean, can you really fault him, for going there for that? So I know for him, though, he likes all the in-state schools. I know it's probably harder than what many people think saying no to these schools, but unless something changes, I just don't see him flipping right now. I think Chance is a better shot.
Yeah, it's tough to flip anything from Ohio State, especially a wide receiver. All right, before I let you go, I got one more guy I want to check in on because we talked about him a lot throughout the spring and into that summer when he took an unofficial visit to Gainesville, and that's 5-star edge Colin Simmons. Remember when he was in Gainesville, all the photos, all the rumors. Then it kind of died down because he took a whole summer tour of official visits. So I just wanted to know, do the Gators still have traction right now with Colin Simmons?
They might get a visit down the line, but I don't see them being a real player at all. We did a story at Gators Online, and it's yes, no, or maybe. And you kind of put down where you kind of see that target in relation to Florida. I put him as a no just because right now, I mean, like you said, I think you said it perfectly, Josh. You check all those OVs in June, all these campus visits, and you ask him about Florida, he says all the right things, but maybe Florida gets an OV down the line and he has a good time. But, it's one that classic phrase, just a hat on the table. I just don't see them overtaking any of these other schools like the Texas schools or whoever, LSU and schools like that. So maybe they get an OV, but if I'm a Florida fan, I wouldn't hold your breath at all. I just think it's going to be too much of an uphill battle.
All right, Corey. Well, it was great having you on the Inside Scoop. I'm amazed that you could even take 10 minutes in between all these commitments this week to join us, so I appreciate your time.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me on.
All right, one more.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me, and remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.